The Presidency. Sources of presidential power. Welcome. Sources of presidential power include express powers, inherent powers, statutory powers, special powers, emergency powers, informal powers, and they all collectively are sources of presidential authority. Express powers. The primary source of presidential powers come from the Constitution in the form of express powers, which are those that are enumerated in the Constitution in Article 2, Sections 2 and 3. Inherent power is a second source of presidential power. Now, inherent powers are powers, first and foremost, that are not expressly stated where in the U.S. Constitution, but they are inferred or implied by the Constitution. These are powers that allow the American president to go beyond the actual black and white wording of the U.S. Constitution. They are, in essence, the power that expand beyond the scope of the Constitution, that enable the American president to carry out many of his key functions. A third source of presidential powers are called statutory powers. Statutory powers are powers that are explicitly granted to the American president by an act of Congress. Therefore, it is one branch of government, the legislative branch, giving another branch of government, the executive branch, a newfound power. Could you imagine? A fourth source of presidential authority are special presidential powers. Presidents have special powers that have evolved from various sources. These sources include the U.S. Constitution, Supreme Court decisions, and congressional statutes. They have come to be regarded as accepted powers and privileges of the presidency. Emergency powers are broad powers that a president exercises during times of a national crisis that can include war, a drought, famine, a national disaster, a flood, the list goes on, a terrorist attack. But this is where the president has an extensive new range of powers that he can utilize to safeguard the nation. Informal powers. Now, informal powers are not a result of an express grant of authority, rules, or even policy mechanisms, but these are powers which have come about through the passage of time. One of the most important informal powers is the power to persuade. A modern president works endlessly to persuade the public, virtually on a continuous basis. They are constantly trying to persuade the people, and they utilize many key methods, such as going public or even the bully pulpit, to help to cultivate public support. Now that we have explored the different sources of presidential powers, it is imperative that we also examine that there are limits on the power of the presidency. Although presidential powers are flexible and can be shaped by the individuals holding the office, these powers do not go unchecked. One critical check on the powers of the president is impeachment. This is the ace in the hole of the legislative branch. And an impeachment is a highly scripted and long drawn out process. Impeachment occurs with the help of both the House and the Senate, and it requires participation by all of its members. The framers established various mechanisms by which each branch can monitor and limit the functions of the other branches to ensure that no one branch can dominate. If this sounds familiar, it should be. This is checks and balances. If one branch tries to move beyond its own sphere or becomes tyrannical, this arrangement, checks and balances, ensures that the other branches can step in and stop it. Now, I always want you to investigate how can the other two branches actually limit the power of the executive? There are various means by which this can be done, whether it is through overriding a presidential veto or simply denying funding to a presidential project. Can you come up with any more checks in which the other branches of government can check the power of the executive?